Good evening, everybody. I'm going to start off by reading one of my jokes from my book here. One of my favourite books, the For Him Monthly Book of Jokes. Here we go. See if you like this. After marrying a younger woman, a middle-aged man finds that no matter what he does in the sack, she never reaches climax. So he visits his doctor for advice. The doctor says, maybe fantasy is the solution, says the doctor. Why not hire a strapping young man and, while you two are making love, have him wave a towel over you? The doctor smiles. Make sure he's totally naked. That way your wife can fantasize her way to a full-blown climax. Optimistic, he returns home and hires a handsome young escort. But it's no use. Even when the stud stands naked, waving the towel, his wife remains unsatisfied. Perplexed, the man returns to his doctor. The doctor says, try reversing it for a while. Have the young man make love to your wife and you wave the towel over them. And so he returns home to try again, this time waving the towel as the same escort does the job enthusiastically. Soon the wife is screaming in pleasure. Smiling, the husband drops the towel and taps the young man on the shoulder. You see, he said triumphantly, that's how you wave a bloody towel. Now, who would that remind us of? I wonder. Let's have a look at our next victim, who is what on the list? Number 7 on the list. Here is the list of the ones that I've managed to ascertain from the reports. Obviously, we know about Stephanie Rangrol. Maria Ruskovich was second. Then it was Dawn King. Then a confidential informant. Yesterday, I think we had Susan Sorensen and Rebecca Heatpis. Now we move on to Connie Palm. Next up are 2 confidential informants. And then number 10, Rennie Braun. Number 11, another confidential informant. Incidentally, in between that, there's 2 complaints by male members of the public saying you need to look at Ken Kratz. Number 12 is a Denise Wynick. Number 13, a Deborah Locke. Number 14, a Sheila Wallace. Number 15, a Christina Lavick. And now some are obviously worse examples, shall we say, than others. This is a particularly bad one, but not the worst. I think that's number 9 on the list. But anyway, Connie Palm, who back in 1998 or 99 was either 33 or 34 years old, through a dating service, I believe it was through the Post-Crescent, the local newspaper, she got in touch with Ken Kratz. Or Ken Kratz got in touch, it doesn't matter. After a few phone calls, they did set a date to meet, although she found out that Ken Kratz was a district attorney, she was cautious because she did have a past history of domestic abuse. And when she mentioned the name Ken Kratz to members of the Harbour House domestic abuse program, for whom one of the main people in charge there was a Beth Schnorr, and other colleagues, eyes rolled, people giggled, some smirked, and they said, well, you do know that there are rumours about Ken Kratz. So the director, Beth Schnorr, told her to be very careful and report back to her. And in the last phone call she had, mentioned Connie to Ken Kratz and had expressed concern. That was in the last phone conversation that she had, that Connie, with Ken Kratz. Beth, even Ken Kratz said that Beth had said that she was concerned about Connie meeting up with Ken Kratz, to which Kratz had, wondered, what do you mean, sort of thing. Anyway, and that concern didn't diminish when, at the end of the phone call, the last phone call before setting up the date, Ken Kratz casually mentioned that he has a dark side. Now, they met up in, I think it was a Burger King or somewhere for coffee, but obviously Kratz was desperate to show off to Connie, and wanted to show her where he worked, his big office and everything, the big building he worked in, but also he wanted to show off his house. And so they went there first of all, and he showed off his house, particularly the bedroom, particular emphasis on the bedroom. But then he shared very intimate details of his previous marriages. And this is why the joke reminded me. He even mentioned that he had had what we call a male-female threesome with the neighbour from down the road. Even admitting to the fact that his wife, Ken Kratz's wife, had said that the neighbour had more to offer than he had. That the neighbour was better than Ken. Anyway, which then caused him to go into, as the Connie refers to it, as a diatribe, a rant of dirty talk. And then went into great detail about what he wants from his sexual victims. He bragged about how many women he'd met over the internet, and then they would meet at hotels out of town, and he would make sure that they didn't get to know, what his profession was. Well, we know what his profession was. He was a professional full-time sexting pervert. But yeah, not mentioning that he's a DA and his name. He went into great detail about one woman who was so turned on by him and wanted him so much. And I won't go into any more gory details. You can read the reports for yourself. He was, according to Connie, completely oblivious, to the fact that she was getting very, very nervous at all of this. So he tried to steer him off the subject because she was so uncomfortable. So he talked a bit about cases that he was involved in, which I'm sure is completely unethical. But he also stressed that nothing of what he was saying should ever get back to Harbour House, because he realised that he has to deal with, come into contact with victims, and he needs to be seen as a good guy. He then went into details of his favourite role-playing, which involved, obviously, bondage, women being submissive, hurting his victim until they used the safe word. She even mentioned that he uses the word Rumpelstiltskin. How appropriate. The other thing he stressed constantly was to tell her that he is completely uninhibited. I think we get that idea. But also stressed that on future dates she should wear heels and a skirt so that he could parade her as his girlfriend in front of his colleagues. Now, he said, "I'll leave it up to you to contact me," obviously thinking that he's onto a winner here. Connie didn't want anything to do with him. She did, as I say, no further contact with Ken, but she did go back and tell the people at Harbour House. And they all agreed that this kind of confirmed what they already knew, and that something needed to be done. Particularly, they could already see that there was issues with him working so close to victims. As I say, this is going back to 1998 or early 1999. This is 10 years before Stephanie Van Gogh. They, as I say, talked. They talked about the fact that because he works so close to victims, that they need to stop him. But as I say, he really wanted to talk about his dark side. He couldn't wait to talk about he's got this dark side. 50 Shades of Black, is it? I don't know. They're absolutely sure that he should have been stopped then, but what can you do? This is the big problem. What do you do when he's the district attorney of Calumet County? Connie also mentions, interestingly, that over the course of the next 10 years, as I say, this is in 2009, in fact 2010 when she came forward. So in the next, during the next 11, 10, 12 years, she did have the misfortune to see, although not speak to, Ken Kratz on a few separate occasions. One interesting one being an event at the Lawrence University, where Ken was sitting with the Hallbacks, the Hallback family, because one of the sons was giving a bit of a lecture. I presume it would have been Mike, but it might not be. She wasn't specific about that. Anyway, as I say, that's number. Let's go back to the list again. Connie is number 7. As I say, I think it's confidential informant that's number 9 on my list is one that often gets mentioned to me. Don't worry, we'll get to that. Also in the DOJ reports, there is a lot of stuff about the toing and froing within the Department of Justice. I think what I'll do is I'll simply carry on reading through, making notes about the various reports, and then once we get all the way through to number 15, then we can have a look at what did actually happen to Ken Kratz. Maybe by then the dude will be able to help me out on one or two of those as well, because it would be nice to have his input on that. Anyway, that's all I've got time for today. So catch you again soon. Bye for now.